A couple of things that really changed the entire movie. We really began kind of thinking that this was going to be a small-scale movie. We did a small-scale movie just a few years ago called David and Goliath, and it was also filmed just in front of green screen. And we just sort of had some cartoony backgrounds in the background and costumes. We just threw sheets and towels on the kids as best we could. And many times you still see t-shirts and blue jeans and tennis shoes. And it was just sort of an experiment to get an idea of what we could do. And we really didn't have any reason to think that we were going to be able to rise much above that for this movie. But two things happened that really changed everything. And one of those is that Donna Norman here from our church volunteered to make costumes for the kids. I know nothing about sewing. I don't know very many people who do, but she knows all about that. And she actually made, I think, something like 52 or 55 costumes for this movie, and really gave an authentic look that we really wouldn't have been able to achieve otherwise. And I don't know how many hours Donna spent making the costumes and altering the costumes and cleaning them and pressing them, and she did an amazing job. And because of what she did, we were really able to elevate this movie into something that we wouldn't have been able to achieve before. Another thing that really changed the entire look of the movie was, as I said, we were just going to have sort of some cartoony looking backgrounds and make the whole movie kind of deliberately cartoony, because we felt that was what we were able to do. But we had the problem of, how are we going to handle the collapse of the wall? How are we going to do that? And somebody laughingly suggested, well, why don't you build a 3D model? And we kind of laughed the suggestion off because we thought, well, that's well beyond our ability. That's well above our pay grade.
Obviously, I knew absolutely nothing about 3D modeling. And really that got started because we couldn't find any good footage that we could use of walls coming down. And so I played around with this 3D modeling software called Blender, that just to see how hard would it be to just make a piece of a wall fall down. I think it took me about a day to figure that out. Watching YouTube videos really is how I learned it all. And that worked really well, so we thought, okay, well, you know, it would look better if it was a bigger sequence of wall. Well, then the wall got bigger and bigger to the point where I was like, well, I might as well just build a whole city.
From there, he undertook to build an actual 3D model of Jericho. And when you see our model in the movie, it's as accurate as we know how to make it. Dennis went online and looked at satellite photos of the Jericho ruins, and the shape that the city has in our movie is based on what he found there.
And so I did actually model the hill is the same width and height of the actual hill of Jericho, and then I molded it and sculpted it to resemble the actual hill. Then I used satellite photos that could showed the remains of the wall, and I tried to actually trace the wall to line up with the actual wall from Jericho. Then I had to learn how to build buildings that looked somewhat like they would have looked. And then as those kind of spread, it didn't take long before eventually I did have an entire city of Jericho.
And the first time he showed it to me, we realized that the whole movie was going to need to look different than we had envisioned, because his model looked so much better than I imagined we would be able to accomplish, that now suddenly, instead of having cartoony backgrounds of buildings and what have you, we were actually able to use the real buildings that he had built in his model, and it gave the whole movie a much more realistic appearance and feel than we ever thought we would have. And so we found ourselves placing virtual lights and virtual cameras inside the Jericho model that Dennis had built, and we were able to get some really great results, much better than we thought. And Dennis actually made a lot more work for himself by doing that, because the next thing was, then we asked him, well, okay, can you then build the Israelite camp? Can you build the tabernacle? And we just kept giving him more and more to do. And he sort of became a full-time 3D modeling artist for us, an animator, and he did a fabulous job. And the trick was, of course, because he had made all of the 3D modeled parts of the movie look so good, there was no way we were going to be able to successfully blend that with cartoony backgrounds of wilderness and desert and palm trees. So when we saw what Dennis was accomplishing, that's when we decided we have to go online and find some actual photographs and footage of the region there in Israel, and rivers and palm trees and mountains and desert. And so it really changed the entire look of the movie. And yes, made it a bigger project and a lengthier project. But I think the end result is well beyond anything that either of us imagined, that any of us imagined that we would be able to do. So I'm very thankful for all of that.